Why don't we start with I know we got like a mix of like people on with us today. So I think it'd be cool to start with some kind of introductions and who you guys are, because I know we've got HeyReach, and then we've got Mr. Brady on here as well. So I think let's go around the room and just say who we are and the companies, I guess, and then we can dive into a very, very cool workflow that Steve has pulled up for us today.
I'll go first then. Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the next hour to join us to just see, well, what are the best practices when using Trigify and HeyReach. For those of you who don't know me, well, my name is Ilya. Don't even try to pronounce my last name because your desk might start floating, but I'm actually the CRO and the guy behind the whole operations when it comes to revenue inside of HeyReach. And if you don't even know what HeyReach is all about, well, we are just a LinkedIn automation tool, like in a simple words, really.
Yeah, but not just a LinkedIn automation tool, like one of the best LinkedIn automation tools on the market.
Yeah,
That's
thanks, Matt. I mean,
yeah.
I'll leave the audience to make that conclusion by the end of this webinar. But yeah, thank you.
Very
Yeah.
good. And yourself, sir?
I'm Steve Brady, go by Mr. Brady. It's a lot more memorable, I think.
Yeah.
I do coaching and consulting for startup founders. And I'm a recovered VP of sales for a lot of, very early stage software. I've been the first employee a couple times, worked at Square a number of years ago. And I have been using so many sales engagement platforms from email to Expandy to HeyReach, which is now my favorite. And Trigify makes it all even more magical, and super excited to share what I've been cooking up.
I feel like every like ex VP of sales is like seems like they've gone through the absolute wars, and it's like I'm never going back again to being a VP of sales.
God willing.
Yeah. Nice. And obviously, hey everyone, I'm Max, one of the co-founders of Trigify. We're a social signal platform. So the way that I would view this call, and we're going to dive into a workflow where Mr. Brady has basically, how much did you close through using Trigify and HeyReach?
It was within the first 2 months that I was really cracking at it. I think it was somewhere around 17K recurring. So just a shade under 50,000, 0 to 50K in about 8 weeks.
Yeah, I kind of like worked it out. Like you're basically knocking in like $1,000 a day. That's a That's like it actually kind of like annoyed me a little bit. It pissed me off because like it's like eight, nine, five or something. I can't remember what the actual mass is. I was like, oh, for God's
Yeah.
sake, like it would have been way better. And I was like, oh, this is like that. Like I don't know if you've watched Wolf of Wall Street when he was like, I was making X million a day, and it really pissed me off because it wasn't quite that. It was like one of those moments. But
Would have been a perfect hook.
yeah, exactly. It would have been a perfect hook. But this call will be recorded. I just saw a comment coming in there. And the cool thing about this is we're actually going to let Mr. Brady do most of the talking today. But Steve basically is a client of both Trigify and HeyReach. And as we said, basically spent, even in the first few months of leveraging both the tools, has just crushed it with actually like, and I think the key part is you were closing. I think like a lot of people can do like, hey, like I booked X amount of meetings, but it's like, who cares? Like, what actually did that happen with those meetings? And I think the amazing thing is like, this is like, no, I actually closed these deals, which I think is cool because it shows, hey, with the right type of intent and the right type of tool to get in front of them, like the world's your oyster, and you don't need to go mental on the volume, which I'm sure we'll cover. So I guess what'll be really cool to start with is maybe a little bit about you, because I think when we were chatting yesterday, right, you described yourself as not like like a nerd with clay. Like you're not like building the most insane things, which I think is actually pretty cool because it shows you don't have to go insanely like mental with like
Yeah.
personalization and stuff like that for these things to work. So yeah, I don't know if you want to give us a little bit of backdrop about your journey with tools in general, and then kind of what's led you to like start using HeyReach and Trigify, and then we'll go into the flow.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go ahead and just start sharing if you don't mind. I'm super visual, so this always helps
Yeah, same.
Well,
everything.
while Mr. Brady is sharing, I mean, the most impressive thing that he did, in my opinion, was the way how this thing was executed. I mean, yes, most of the tools will say, well, or most of the approaches will say, we'll generate interest, but we didn't generate conversions, right? Or money, right? At the bottom line. But the way he did it, and like that's why we decided to just join and like put this out there for people to see and know. It's because you don't have to be super technical. You don't have to be super, I don't know, hyper personalizing just about anything. But not to spoil the show, Mr. Brady will walk through us. Just remember that things don't have to be that complicated to actually generate some revenue, honestly. But
Yeah,
yeah, take it away.
Yep, I think that's a good segue. So just to kind of level set, right, where I kind of see the landscape and a bit about where I've participated in it. So I've been in SaaS and fintech primarily for almost 15 years, and I got started right about here. Predictable revenue came out in like 2008. So Aaron Ross builds this whole system inside Salesforce, one of the greatest business stories ever. Certainly, like one of the best cloud computing software companies ever. And then that really starts catching fire. But at this stage, most of us were still cold calling. Like my outbound process was I got a bunch of like it was like 500 at a time, just dead ass cold phone numbers that we manually had to dial, right? And like that was outbound at the time. And then much of that decade, you have all these tools that a lot of us know and have used at some point. You've got Outreach, SalesLoft, pick your data company. This all starts exploding, and the rise of the segmented SDR, a person whose job was to prospect, figure out how to use these tools, send increasingly massive numbers of emails every day, and all of this started to break. Not totally, wheels come off, but people started seeing really massively declining, marginal gain where you might have gotten, say, 10, 15% reply rates on a good campaign. We're now 7, 5. Then all of a sudden, in order to just run this, you needed to buy 10 domains and 3 inboxes. You had to learn all this technical stuff for email. I actually worked for a email automation software where we basically did like a SalesLoft, but just for recruiters. So this was like 2007 to 2020. So that was really my bread and butter. Now I think because of the rise of everyone doing the same thing, plus now that AI has kind of made it go a bit unhinged, we're kind of swinging back to a much more pared back, what I call like an authentic interaction, a more kind of hand-to-hand combat type approach. But those are really hard to do traditionally. They're hard to operationalize. They're hard to scale. But I'll show you guys some neat ways that you could use Trigify and HeyReach to get at this. And I'll skip through all that stuff. If you guys don't know, kind of my sort of like guiding thesis has been just take a look at like one person, how Adam Robinson and retention.com and RB2B have leveraged LinkedIn to be their primary go-to-market channel in every aspect, from content to outbound to public communication to ads. It's their whole sort of engine here. And a couple of years ago, I was working at the last VP of sales role. We were basically building a bank in Canada. So you couldn't really cold call or cold email with canned spam. It's really tough to do. But we had a massive TAM of about 2 million small businesses that we were trying to sell a banking service to. So what did we have at our disposal? We basically only had LinkedIn. And so we had built a team where I had 2 SDRs running 25 LinkedIn accounts, all through Expandy. If any of you have used Expandy, I'm sure there's a wince or a cringe here because it can do the thing, but getting the data out into your CRM or trying to run reporting or create any kind of complex workflows, it was a total nightmare. But the key takeaway is it worked, right? So we were able to send 10,000 kind of connection requests a month. We were booking 80 to 120 demos. And that worked for the 14 months I was there. I didn't really know if this would ever be super useful or not, but we'll get back to kind of where I came back to this a bit later.
Sorry to cut
No,
you off.
perfect.
Where are those SDRs right now? Have they quit outbound just because their life was a nightmare back then, or what? I'm just messing.
I think the two of them are still there. One's moved into like an ops role, and I think the other one's gonna move out of this. But it's still a very effective system, right? And
how were you
think
sending
that's
so
why.
many connection requests back then? I guess there was no limit back then, was there? So you could just like smash.
Well, what we were doing, so if you have 25, right? We had 25
Oh, I guess
profiles,
it's
and
25 accounts, right?
I think we were sending 40 connection requests a day, every day.
Yeah.
So,
Back
that's
then
how it
it
sort
was
of worked
scalable.
out.
Yeah.
Back then it was scalable because you could have sent, like realistically up to 3,000 connection requests per account. But now obviously things have changed, right?
Don't do this now.
Yeah. Well, we did have a question which I think is linked to this kind of like concept around like scalability with LinkedIn, which is do you rent LinkedIn accounts from vendors like Mirror Profiles? And obviously if you didn't, then, and maybe this was one for you, Leah, but like if someone is like perhaps like a 5-person company, right, but they want to go up to like 25 profiles because there is still limitations now. Like, do you recommend doing that type of thing? Like, what is like the general play, would you say, to get like, I guess like a level of volume on LinkedIn?
If the question, sorry guys, my speakers just shut off. But if the question was like, should you use like accounts vendors to actually get accounts, acquire accounts, and scale up your outreach? Well, obviously the answer to that question is yes. And the reason being is that yes, you can create great and well-targeted lead lists. Yes, you can create whatever copy that you want to send out. But the truth is you need certain level of scalability. And if you're limited by the team members, meaning the real people working in your company, and let's remember this, right? So LinkedIn accounts are a personal property of the employee itself. They're not a company property, right? So some people might even say, well, I don't really want to participate in this whole thing. And they have the full right to do so. But then again, should that limit the business of growing, especially if LinkedIn is the channel, like the go-to channel? Well, no. And this is where you use actually these accounts vendors, which are at this point, they have mastered their game, honestly. So definitely give them a try, see how it goes. And that's the only way, honestly, to get some fake accounts to scale up their outreach. And last but not least, if you're thinking, well, would the people know that this is a fake account? Well, trust me on this one, only the people using fake accounts would recognize a fake account. Other than that, but nobody would recognize the difference, really.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Cool. I have nothing to add. I think that's a great explanation of why or why not to do that.
Yeah.
So here's the landscape. And then what I had been doing, I kind of started shifting to this at the beginning of last year, seeing just how hard it was for me to get email results only for myself or for clients. I had built a process doc of, okay, well, how can I just do this without tooling? But let's say I'm not going to do any sort of automation, and a lot of the times I'm working with founder-led sales, bootstrapped, or maybe slightly funded, but money's really tight. So plus they're not that sophisticated. It's just, hey, I have an hour. What can I do on LinkedIn for an hour? So I was, giving this to some clients. It was working really well. I started doing one extra little bit in here. Where's the aware piece? So there's one tool. I won't spend a ton of time on it, but for those of you who spend any amount of time on LinkedIn, I totally suggest checking out Aware. One thing it's really great at is instead of being at the mercy of like the LinkedIn algorithm for your newsfeed, you can actually curate only specific profiles to show up here. So like I'll have these different ones that are categorical. They just kind of show up in an engagement feed now where in a half an hour, I can knock out like 15, maybe even 20 high quality comments so that I'm now visible in the conversation where I know my like ICP is already hanging out, right? This will make more sense in a second, I promise. And so after doing this for a while, I realized, shit, maybe there's a better way to think about prospecting from a signals-based level, meaning instead of just building a static list of, okay, well, I want to sell to VPs of sales in SaaS of 200 or more employees or whatever, but not really knowing how to open a conversation or what's relevant to them. I was seeing this work in a very manual way, and that's when I found Trigify and was like, holy shit, this might actually be the perfect answer to 2-3 hours of manual work that I'm doing every day with no real way to like structure any reporting or running any automations. So I'll pause if you guys want to interject there at all before I
No,
show
I
the
think that's cool.
Trigify
I think
aspect.
that's cool. I think fire on. Let's go for it.
Okay. And so after doing this for like a month or two, I started to realize, okay, I know pretty clearly now what handful of like creators, if you will, what handful of accounts are producing enough content every day that I can add value to in the conversation. And I see a ton of my like ICP hanging out. And that's really important because then what that allows you to do very easily in Trigify is you just go start tracking these profiles through the engagement piece. And so I'll picking on Alex Boyd, the founder of Aware. And so what am I looking at here? Over on this side, you can see, right, it's telling me this is 1,664 unique profiles who have engaged with any of Alex's content since I've been tracking it. So that means they've liked or commented something that Alex wrote about. And then this is just saying like within the last 24 hours, there's some new ones. So what can I do with this now? I just basically have this set up. You can even see for some of you that might recognize the symbol, this little clay icon is telling me that they've already been added to clay. Well, Trigify has a cool always on sort of webhook where every day it'll you set the time, like it's telling me the next sync will be at 11. And any of these net new profiles, they're going to get pushed into this clay table.
And Steve, maybe I'll just inject that. Like, what made you pick? So, like, if we're thinking about like the thought leader, right? So you picked Alex Boyd. Like, what made you pick him, and how would you, I guess, if someone was to kind of mirror this workflow, how would you want them to think about picking the correct type of thought leader?
I think this is probably the trickiest part of the whole, like your list is your strategy. In general, it's going to dictate everything downstream of it. So trying to figure out, what is sort of the intent, if you will, or what is the signal that's going to put someone onto this list, and what am I going to do after that? For me, there's two things with Alex. One, I've actually known Alex for several years. One of his agencies was a vendor when I was a sales lead. Two, I use the product and an affiliate. So if nothing else, it was like, I like talking about this stuff. So it's a very easy opener for me to authentically say, hey, yo, I use this tool that I'm assuming you know about since you follow Alex. Let me know if you ever want to trade notes. And then the third part is if they're at all interested in this stuff, they probably could be sold some sort of, productized service around the type of stuff I build, just maybe one-off consulting or any type of, higher ticket engagement. So that's sort of my thought process for getting to Alex specifically.
Nice.
To Mr. Brady's point over here, list building is everything, at least in my opinion. Like most people getting stuck on what should I write a message, but trust me on this one. If you spend your time in building out a decent list or finding the right influencer, the messaging within your outbound campaign, regardless whether it's LinkedIn or email or whatever it is, will just compose on its own because you have relevancy on how you have created this lit list in the first place. Now, I believe that the major factor in the success that Mr. Brady over here had was that he specifically knew, well, this is the type of influencer that I want to follow, and this is the type of audience that this influencer attracts. Now, obviously, if you guys need to, for everyone listening, and Mr. Brady, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert over here. But then again, like spend as much time as possible on, it's as much time as needed to actually build out, find the right influencer before you actually scaling and automating your outreach.
Yeah. One of the things that you can actually do is we actually have a feature for that. So you've got like a thought leaders section here. Yeah. So you can be like, okay, hey, like you got to think about the topics that your business basically solves. And I think you nailed it, right? It's like list building is the most important part. And actually, if you reach out to someone, and I think this is why your campaign converted, right? If you reach out to someone at the right time with the right message that's linked to the way you're reaching out, then it's going to convert at such a high rate. And so you can do, yeah, for example, you could type in Clay and you can say like, hey, like find me anyone who's got, X followers that talks about at X frequency within the X like last date range, essentially. And so you can start to understand like, hey, do they talk about things that are very relevant or like prevalent to me? And then you can start tracking them essentially. And so you can find the right ones who talk about the right things, which therefore means that they're basically getting the right level of like, or the right like engagement. So then when you reach out to like, I guess like Matt Dawnfed here and things like that is okay, they're engaging with this particular person, Alex Boyd, because Alex Boyd typically talks about XYZ strategies on LinkedIn. He talks about this, which means they're interested in that subject area. And then I'm very interested to see how your message then perhaps relates back to the reason that you're reaching out based on where you found them in the first place, which would be, which I know we'll go on to now.
Great segue.
Yeah.
So I won't belabor, and for everybody here, I'll make sure connect with me on LinkedIn, and or some other way, I'll make sure people attending can get a templated version of this clay table so that you could start tooling around with this on your own. I personally, we kind of mentioned this before, like a year ago, you can find it was like 11 months ago, I had a somewhat viral post where I was ranting, kind of like old man shouting at the cloud of Clay's bullshit. It doesn't do anything. I don't understand. Can anyone actually make it work? And now I'm in it like hours a day. It's a critical part of my own workflow and everyone else. But the real breakthrough didn't come until a good friend of mine showed me, hey, check this out. I know you're not a believer, but I've built something that I think would be useful for you. Let me just give you the template, and then you go nuts and break it and figure it out. So I'll pass that on to everybody else. But the short of it, what makes it helpful is this data comes in from Trigify. It's a webhook with a bunch of different bits of data that you could push into these individual columns, right? So like I could see whether they liked or commented, what the comment was. I use an enrichment from LinkedIn to get the extra stuff from their profile or company that I need. Then kind of just ask some questions with a light agent of whether it fits my ICP or not. Then once that's done, it will automatically push the fits into a HeyReach campaign that I'll show you guys.
But the cool thing as well, you missed out here. Like you've now chucked them into HeyReach without any credits being spent.
With no credits being spent. Also, like I don't have to, the old way you would do this is maybe you had like a VA or somebody manually go through and build this list, right? Which would be a day, 2 days worth of work to get maybe like 100 rows. Then you have to take that CSV and like upload it into another tool and then export it again. All that, I don't even have to click a button. Once the data flows in here, it just automatically gets pushed to a campaign every day, only if they're a fit. And I've got that all sort of like tightly taken care of.
And what was the differentiation when it comes to the fit, whether it's a fit or not a fit? Like,
honestly, it's actually quite over-engineered for this, to be honest with you. I used a basic, this is not even very well optimized. That's a whole other rabbit hole, right? With a lot of stuff when you use Clay is, how do I figure out what do I want to do to begin with? And then the second tier is, how do I optimize the cost of doing that thing? And this is not a great way, like using one of their native little agents, which is just basically a little AI that you prompt, hey, take a look at some of the structured data in here that I'll give to you and tell me if it fits or not based on the stuff I'm telling you to look for. That's the simplest way. And the value is I don't have to worry about adjusting with like a filter, which I could maybe do. And once it is triggered, downstream, it can just fill out the rest of the rows so that if it fits, then it goes into a campaign.
No, but I love it, quite honestly, because you're proving a point that it doesn't have to be complicated. Like there should be a module that actually understands, well, this is where you need to spend credits, and this is where you don't really need to spend credits. And that's all there is, right? So great job, honestly, like nothing in particular aside from that. Cool.
All right. So all this is flowing into HeyReach, and what HeyReach is going to do for me, I'll go to that specific campaign and show you guys the message workflow. This might look very, some eyes might be glazing over if you're not used to like these little tree flow structures of how to set up some basic automations. But in layman's terms, all this is doing for you is when you add a lead into a campaign, again, you're not doing it. So you just got to make sure the logic's pretty tight here so that you don't have to oversee it. If they're already connected, in this case, I actually don't mind sending them a message. In this particular campaign, now you can see this is just a static message. This is not AI created. There's no bracketed special fields where there's some spin tax taking something from the spreadsheet. It's just a relevant message that I think anybody who is following Alex should resonate with. And if they do, it's probably strong enough that they'll reply with a lot of interest. I'll show you one response that's particularly funny in a second. But
I think what's cool about this as well, though, the way that you've done this is because you've done a clay table specifically for Aware. So I'm guessing what you've done is you do a new clay table per thought leader that you track, and then you can control the messaging inside of HeyReach without having to use AI essentially. So it keeps things way more clean, clear-cut, and simple.
I'll show you. That's great. A reminder. I'll show you after this one. I literally just got a reply from a head of sales at a company I started in a campaign like a few days ago. So I could show you a different setup from here.
Cool.
But yeah, I won't belabor it. I send the same first message if they're not a connection. If we're not already connected, then it sends the same message, and then I just have like free value. Like, look, if you're interested in Aware, you're probably doing shit on LinkedIn. Here is a guide of how to do it better, etc. So nothing too complicated here. No chat, OpenAI API required. Just some thoughtful, punchy copy that will resonate with everybody. And like it's to get to the point of not.
But the thing is, though, man, like the crazy thing is you're underplaying it there. Yeah, like it's like totally like not like fancy AI stuff, but that copy is so relevant and so personalized just due to the connection between the three tools, essentially, that there's no need to go fancy with it because you're already getting that through the process.
And one step further, it's a slight tangent that's worth talking about, going back to kind of not just using Aware, but using multiple touch points, kind of like soft interactions from LinkedIn. If you're building this list, okay, and you're starting from Trigify, engaging with people that you're also actively commenting on a daily, if not weekly basis, right? Now you're in the conversation as well as like Scott Leese or Adam Robinson, because now that person, if they're just a lurker, they keep seeing your name and face and comments. So when your connection request comes in, your acceptance rate is going to be way higher. And they're probably more likely to engage with you, especially if maybe they've already engaged with you publicly or they've seen it. They've already gotten a flavor for like what they're going to get privately.
Yeah. To your point, I mean, commenting on people's posts is a great add-on, obviously, of what you're trying to do. And because you know that there is an engagement on a specific post where you want to be at, that makes things even simpler. Now, this is a great point over here. Like, if you do a great list building, you don't have to go hard on the copy. Opposed to that, because you cover two cases, timeliness and relevance, right? Because you have a relevant and it's a timely message that needs to be sent out. Opposed to that, let's say that you don't have let's say you cover relevance because you found a matching ICP, but you don't have timeliness, meaning your message is not timely. All the hyper personalization in the world will not get you to the place that you want to be because you are basically not hitting the first few starting points that they need to be there. But since you've covered that, well, the message itself, it can really be a static message.
Yeah.
I'll show you guys another quick example. Are we good for time? Can I show another example here?
Go for it.
Sure.
All right. Where is Austin? Okay. How many of you have seen the thing pop up in your feed and there's a video or a GIF and it's a scroll, like rapid scrolling lead magnet, and it's you gotta connect, like, and comment, right? It's been blowing up for months now. One person who does this a lot and does a really good job is Austin Hughes. He's co-founder and CEO of a company called Unify GTM. I kind of compete against this as like a productized service of their SaaS offering. And thanks to Trigify, I have 10,374 unique profiles who I know are somewhat interested, possibly very interested, especially if they're engaging in the lead magnet stuff. I already know exactly what they want, something they're very specifically interested in. And so I only started this campaign, on the 4th. So like 9 days ago, I first started pulling this in. I was thinking maybe I need to do something a little fresher for the webinar. So I started pulling these in. And like, I think you can expect, just for benchmarks here, everybody, somewhere between like a 6 and a 12% ICP to overall, whatever audience match, if you will. What I mean is, so there's like roughly 10,000 total profiles that have been pulled over. And I've got 718 that are an ICP fit. But these are all, for me, like really, really high quality. They're companies with at least 50 people, and they're VP director level of marketing and sales. And this is, I don't have to do anything to get this. It's just, once I know who to look for, where I think those people are, it's just going to flow into here. And I'll show you, I literally just got this. So she got the first message last week, right? Again, doing the same thing. This went through HeyReach, a relevant but not personalized message. I had to turn the campaign off. They're supposed to get this the next day, but I was needing to run something else. So I didn't get the second one out until Tuesday. I actually took it one step further yesterday with these really high value ones. And I'm showing this to make a point of, if you can, this is where the automation is where you need to think of where the leverage is. If I can take off of my plate all the stuff that doesn't need to be personalized, but gets the ball rolling, now I can take 5 to 10 minutes to go record a custom Loom video of me walking through this process of how, like, it's very meta. Hey, here's how I got to this point with you. Let me show you the exact tool set and everything. And I sent this yesterday. Also, I like to promise it's not some AI bullshit with the video. Great, cool stuff. Mind sharing it with these two people who run our demand gen. And this came in literally 18 minutes before jumping on here.
Nice.
So, like, I start from 10,000 that I get from Austin. It turns into 712 with a little bit of selecting I get with data from Trigify filtered out through Clay. I just send the initial outreach and connections through HeyReach. And then when I get connected with the super high value targets, I can spend an hour or two a day and only need to craft 10, 15 of these. And I get this type of response. I had 2 people yesterday respond in day booking meetings. And this one is already, you can see I'm on a path to getting routed to the right person.
And go to your HeyReach there a sec. I want to see those campaigns, the stats, because I saw one with a 50%. So that was your Alex Boyd, 52% reply rate, which is insane. And this other one, 24% as well. I think what's like really cool is like, go find me an email campaign that converts at this rate. You can't. And the other thing that's really interesting is if we look at like the numbers that are being used here as well, it's like they're like low, like the volume's not crazy, which, we started today talking about like the scalability of LinkedIn Outreach. But the thing is going back to like, Ilya's point earlier, is when you do it, like when you reach out to people that are interested and it's topical, it's the right timing, these things convert. So in theory, like if you went back to your experience, I guess, when you were a VP of sales sending out like thousands and thousands connection requests, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that now, because like these things are converting at a way higher rate, and therefore you don't need to have like this mega like LinkedIn infrastructure. Like you still need like a nice one, but like it doesn't need to be as big as you think, because these things will convert so well.
Well, and here's the kicker too, right? Without the intent data, I just am getting, let's say I would just go to Sales Navigator or Apollo or something. And again, you're just starting from a pretty static, like firmographic or demographic set of ICP parameters. That doesn't tell you anything other than who it is you're reaching out to. But this tells me at least a little bit of stuff of what are they engaging in. And if you're smart, right, you start to hone in on, well, what are the types of engagement, or what is the topical content, or the you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Once you have something extra, you don't need a ton of volume because it's really honed in.
And basically, it all happens into the LinkedIn ecosystem, from post finding, from person mapping out to a LinkedIn message to correlation between something that actually happened. Which is why I typically say, well, it's all great. I mean, you can do email outreach, not that something is wrong with it. But if you're on LinkedIn, well, just continue using LinkedIn as a channel. And if you are generating too much and you want to scale this, like, you don't really have to need, if you're having a too big of a lead list, then you will need to have a robust system to actually execute on actions. But if you just narrow it down and niche it down, and truth to be told, like, you can probably reach out to 400 people, get 50 positive responses, and you can do the same with 10,000 people at the same time. Now, which one is going to cost more money, right? So that's where, like, you list building and crafting, like, pretty much cleaning up is the right way to go for LinkedIn, really.
One last little one to show you. It is really fun when you sort of get accused of mind reading in this process. So when you do this really right, people do kind of, again, this is all automated, right? Like you could do this fully hand to hand if you want, use HeyReach to just get the connections going, right? So that you don't have to click through all that if you want to send every message custom. But if you, put a little thought into something relevant, you can have some automated magic get produced
cool.
from it.
And I don't want to get too technical, but the cool thing that I like about HeyReach is you can have like webhooks for like replies. And so what I've done, like, I don't touch anything, like, because I think like I'm good at automation because I'm probably inherently quite lazy. And so like
also an understatement to say good at automation. Max is a wizard. If nobody follows Max's content on automation, it's next level.
I do your flow that you have, and then I just listen to see if they reply. So like the one that you took like a day or two to get back on the reply, I just listen to say if they're interested on in the lead magnet, and then I can, like, you just start to like automate the reply and things like that as well. And so it's like you can, I think that's the cool thing, is like the API is like super strong, so you can do a lot of cool like custom stuff throughout it as well.
Well, when we built out the tool, the first thing that we thought of, like, for who you are building out this, right? So obviously that's a normal question. And the first answer was, well, we are building an interface for the laziest SDR, right? Because people like to click, they don't really want to do things. But then when we were building the API, it was more like, for who are we building this out? And it's still like, we have to think of the laziest person in the world who is good at automation. And that's how you create an infrastructure of people to like you, because it fits into their character. I'm not saying you're lazy. I mean, come on, you're running a company and all of that.
Very lazy.
But
Yeah.
No,
I just like automating things is the crux there. But that is awesome. I'm conscious of time a little bit, so we're gonna open it up. I know there's been some questions kind of firing in throughout, but it would be good to see if there's any questions, chuck them in now. I think a few things to mention is the clay table. I think Mr. Brady is going to be pretty generous and share that with us, and so we can circulate that in the follow-up email that we'll do, which will also include a link to the recording. So you'll have all of that as well, so you can play around with these flows. But again, the beautiful thing about this is once you just connect it, like you don't need to go tinkering with it massively, because there's not like, it's probably, I bet you anything, it's probably one of the most simple clay tables, but the most effective workflow there is, like, from simplicity to effectivity. I don't know. But I bet you anything that would be like up there as well. We did have a question that came in earlier, so I am going to ask that one, which was just was around the topic that we had at the start, which was using potentially fake accounts. And the question was, you don't have them commenting on posts, right? And I'm assuming the answer is no. I'm assuming you use them for outbound, but I might be totally wrong.
I mean, in my opinion, we've also seen, well, the account is actually your asset. Your commenting is also your asset, and your outbound is where things like magic should happen. So we do see some people actually, well, treating that account, even though it's fake, like a real person's account, right? So they plug it into other solutions where they comment and they just engage. Now, are those people going to get offended, or are those people going to, well, the answer to that is whether they will know that this is not a real person's account. But the only problem with the fake accounts is how do you create a bridge between we are having a conversation, but you cannot meet with me, you have to meet with someone else. Yeah. That's the biggest pain point. And aside from that, like all the commenting and outreach, as long as it's relevant and respective, like you don't really have that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Also, I think a lot of people too are cognizant of even if you are talking to a real person, so to speak, you might not be talking to them through the chat, right? They might have an EA who handles their stuff, like they handle their email inbox, and increasingly common with social as well. So, I don't think, look, at the end of the day, if you reach out, doesn't matter who you are. I just answered a cold email, and I'm really hard to get to on cold email because it was a good subject line and they had a very relevant short message, and I replied immediately like, yes, I hate that product that you're talking about, and I'd love to see what you're making. I don't even know who the person is, if they're real or not, but I remember their name too, and I booked a meeting. So don't overthink Brady, that stuff.
You had 25 LinkedIn accounts managed by 6 people, right?
2.
What's the difference between like, I don't know, this is a real person or this is not a real person, as long as it's not the same person behind handling the conversation? It's the same thing. But either way, like the whole fake term, that's where what bugs people out, well, whether I should do it. Bottom line, what Mr. Brady always showed over here, you don't need that level of scalability. I mean, if you do, right, this is how you do it. But before you go into that, well, you basically need to prove a concept, well, hyper relevance, timely message without very much like hyper personalization and all of that. It's just pretty great result, and that's all there is at the end of the day.
One just closing add on to that with like the fake profile, etc. One nice thing about LinkedIn that's not the case on a lot of other socials is they're very tight KYC policies. So it was a lot easier 3-4 years ago to spin up a bot profile that was not really a real person, because you didn't need to issue like government ID all the time. And now they've gotten a lot better. You don't have to do that on X. You don't really have to do that on Instagram, right? So there is more inherent trust that if you do have one of these profiles, oftentimes it is a person, they just don't use their LinkedIn. So you're kind of like renting their name and likeness, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's topic for another day.
And we have a question, I guess, linked to this like personalization part, which was what you were just talking about there, which is you obviously put a video in the message to the woman that you reached out to previously, and the question's around, do you tend to do a small video of how you want to help them? Is that recommended like with highly relevant videos?
I absolutely love video two ways. One, the easiest thing anybody can do is attach to your like HeyReach campaign, send 1 to 2 like no pitch, just something interesting or a lateral question or some valuable add-on like, hey, I thought you might like this person. They also write about this stuff. That works really well. Give them another good follow. But then come in a couple of days later, just go into LinkedIn mobile, use the native video capture, just raw dog the selfie sort of video. It's capped at 2 minutes, and just sort of like talk about yourself. We'll talk about why you're reaching out to them, some sort of interesting insight or feedback that they should be, excited to hear, and then kind of end it with like, and oh, by the way, like this is what I do and this is how I got here. Let me know if any of this stuff is relevant. And I kid you not, like when I have the time or I make the time to do these, I get nonstop kind of replies of like, yo, this is the best. Because they know it's not some HeyGen created thing, right? They know you at least took the time for them. It's a bit more of an art to really nail your script and stuff, but it does work really well.
But people don't really want to feel like they were part of a list. So they want to feel that you did a research on them, that you did your homework on them. So that's why like when you're hyper personal, well, that thing works as well pretty nicely.
Yeah, nice. Okay, next question. I was wondering if this question would come up. Apollo and Seamless. It was only a matter of time. The honest answer to the question is basically with Apollo and Seamless being taken down, do you see Trigify being a target? Like the honest answer is no. There's a lot of fear mongering that has happened on LinkedIn. It's quite funny how everyone's jumped on the train to like post, and if you look at it, they've all posted the exact same image, so everyone's just reusing their own post. It's like quite funny. Um, but they were warned like massively to stop doing what they were doing, and what they were doing is they were going after premium content within LinkedIn. So like Sales Navigator, Recruiter, and then there was also a lot of like data leakages, things like that going on inside of there. Long and short of it is they weren't able to remove the plugin in time, which they have now done, and consequences the company page is gone. But the platform's still there. They're still doing exactly what it's doing. So I think like again, like all things, anything with LinkedIn is just like always be careful, right? Like it's always like make sure that you're within kind of the allotted guidelines, whether you're using HeyReach and reaching out, like you're not going mental and spamming the living crap out of people. And then when it comes to scraping with Trigify, the beautiful thing about it is you don't connect like your account. So like Trigify handles all of that as well. If you're doing that and you're using other tools, because of course people will be, like if you're using Phantom Buster or Appfire or anything like that out there, just got to be careful. Like don't go too hardcore on it. That's like as much as I can say. And on the
No, definitely. I mean, to add on that, like Apollo was actually scraping one of their biggest competitors, right? So basically, it was a matter of time when LinkedIn would say, well, you cannot do this anymore. But aside from that, really, they're still operational. That's number one. They'll still have a growing user base. That's number two. And number three is, well, Trigify actually doesn't use our account because you notice that the biggest asset that LinkedIn holds is their data, meaning the people within the LinkedIn network. So if you're using your account to do the scraping, now this is where things will get shaky. So I mean, I'm pretty happy that we're integrated with Trigify because you guys don't do that, and that's crucial, obviously, for the healthy and safety of safety of the account.
exactly.
And a quick shout out to you guys. You have really safe built-in limits. You're really smart about like, proxy stuff so that since you do need to have your session cookies involved, it's very, very secure. I'd like to preface that there's a reason why I didn't do any automation for years. It was because I thought Expandy was the only safe one that I knew of for a while, but it just wasn't. I didn't need the volume, so I didn't need to look for it. And then once I got more familiar and got my hands on using HeyReach and understanding how you guys operate, then I was like, okay, this is actually really well thought of. You can't go in here and just sort of blast and spam. So with the product limitations, it tells me that you guys are thinking about keeping users safe from themselves.
Of course,
Exactly. Exactly. And conscious of time, there's a couple there's one more question here which I think is a good one to end on. Which was around and I'm curious on this one, right? Because I don't really or haven't really done it much, but is LinkedIn voice note DMs versus like AI gen personalized videos. I guess the question is like the efficiency between. Let's start with this. I'm going to edit the question. Do you do voice notes? Yes or no? If they work, cool. And then like, would you use that over using like an AI gen like video, or like where would you prioritize that?
Okay, me personally, I do not. I have a pretty strong opinion. It's also part of like, it's a hill I'll die on that I don't think anybody wants to get more Gen AI video content or anything like that sent to them cold. And I don't want to have 5, 10, 20 of these a day personally. So that's kind of my stance on it. I think there's definitely a place for it. I don't think B2B SaaS is the right place. I don't think something where you need to build this enterprise relationship where a vendor might subscribe to your 5-figure service for years on end is going to really like starting the relationship off that way. Do that in B2C and stuff like that. So I have a pretty hard stance on that. I will say, I know a lot of people who do voice notes really well. I think when you're doing cold, the hierarchy of conversation quality is in person, video call, and then live call, and then asynchronous text, and then email. So personally, I would rather start with the video so that they get something from me. They get to see me a bit more than they don't have a face to attach to the voice. So I'd always start with the highest quality of conversation type.
Yeah,
completely agree. Like you can do more harm with a voice note compared to a video, because a video showcase your face, your expressions, and so on. A voice note actually just showcase you speaking to a mic. And what if like the surroundings are too noisy, or you cannot put a decent sentence within 15 seconds? Do you think like that would convert? No, obviously not. And the video gives you that liberty to actually, well, this is who I am.
Or whose voice is it at the end of the day too? Like I'm increasingly suspicious with and just think of how wacky things are going to keep getting too, guys. Like I think that the biggest thing to not screw up is trust, and trust is going to be an increasingly important, currency as more AI created content of any kind is proliferated.
yeah. And I like how you said kind of video call, like shout out to all those people who cold call people through FaceTime. You have some serious stones to do that.
Yeah.
But listen, let's wrap it up there. I think what was really cool is we'll get this flow out, we'll get the YouTube, we'll get it on YouTube, and then we'll send that out. HeyReach has a free trial, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, HeyReach offers a free trial? Yeah.
Yeah. HeyReach is a free trial. Trigify is a free trial. You can connect Trigify to Clay, to HeyReach as well. You don't even need to use Clay, by the way, in this whole thing as well, if you don't want to. And you can do that from the trial. So go ahead, go sign up to both tools. We'll send you the playbook, run the playbook. I guarantee you'll get a meeting within a week of doing that flow. And if you don't, come back to me and I'll extend our trial again a little bit more till you do, because I guarantee you that you will. That's just like a given.
Same on this end, same on this end. I have so much faith in this whole system because it's already proven to be working. So it's really, if it's free, just give it a try. That's all there is. Cool.
Love it. Well, Mr. Brady, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Ilya, great to see you again. Cheers, everyone.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.